Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be going over OmegaRecruit training for summer 2024, our summer webinar series for OmegaRecruit. My name is Sarah Beth Russell. I'm a professional service specialist, and with me I have my co-host, Carrie Freiler. She is going to be the one in the question section answering those during the webinar. And she is actually going to speak to you guys right now, just giving a little background information over OmegaFi, who is the company that owns OmegaRecruit. And so I will turn it over to her real quick.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah Beth. So for more than 30 years, OmegaFi has provided technology solutions to help customers manage their finances, streamline their operations, recruit new members, and communicate with their members. Whether it's working with 57 different headquarters or local chapters, house corporations, IFC, and Panhellenic councils, and alumni associations across more than 650 campuses, we remain the industry leader when it comes to technology in the fraternity and sorority community. Based out of Columbus, Georgia, we securely process more than 1.1 million per day for our clients and have securely processed more than 4 billion since 1992. We're also deeply committed to serving, promoting, and advancing the fraternity and sorority experience. We aim to make raving fans with every individual or group we work with by reaching, innovating, and acting with agility. We challenge ourselves to dream big every day and to help others achieve their own dreams. To say we're passionate about what we do is an understatement, and it is that passion that has encouraged our clients to trust us to do the heavy lifting so that they can focus on their mission and having fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie, for that. We'll go ahead and take a look today at our agenda. So we're going to go over just a few things to get us started. So tips for a successful recruitment. Then we're going to look at login and account setup. And then we'll go through the main menu and features of OmegaRecruit actually within the system, and we'll look at voting and reporting in that as well. And at the end, again, we'll have Q&A, but if you do have questions during the webinar, submit those in the question box that you have available. There are 3 things that we recommend as best practices before getting into recruitment season, and we have those listed here. So the first one is login, just making sure you have all your members logged into the OmegaRecruit system at least 1 week before recruitment starts. If not earlier, if you plan to run any mock recruitment sessions, you'll definitely want to make sure they are logged in when you do those sessions. So as early as you can get them logged in, you can start that, and we'll go over kind of what that will look like as well, especially since we have done our master reset, and you'll need to add any members that are not admins into the system. A reminder, if you already use any of our other softwares like Vi, Omega One, or Vault, if your organization is listed under like single sign-on, make sure you're adding your members with the same email that you use for whatever login you use for your Vault, Omega One, like Vi. Typically, you can go look at that if you're login, like if you use Vault, or if you have the same login that you use for your organization's login, you can go into that portal and pull that email up. So just make sure that you're adding them with the correct email. That way they don't have multiple logins and they're not setting up multiple accounts, that they can log in and it'll be under the correct user. And then the next thing we say is best practice is to do just that, practice. So we highly encourage that you run through practice version of recruitment with all of your members using our test files, like I mentioned before, like a mock recruitment. So all of your users can get the feel of OmegaRecruit and see how they're able to submit their votes. And then the last thing for best practice, we say to train. So as the admin for your chapter, make sure you're using the resources that we have provided for you to learn the system and use it to its fullest potential. You can review webinars like this one. We have articles within our help center, which we'll look at, and as well as review the training information within OmegaRecruit. These practices will help you set you up to have the best recruitment possible. So as an admin, if your account is new, you're going to get an email for logging in that's going to look like this. So this is going to be your activation email. So if this is your first semester using OmegaRecruit as a chapter, you'll get something like this. For members, they are going to get a login email that looks similar to this one. This is whether they've used OmegaRecruit before or not. If a member has never used OmegaRecruit before, they'll complete registration. So when they go to create their account, it will take them through that registration process. If they've already used OmegaRecruit in a previous year, you'll still have to add them as a user, but when they hit to create the account, they'll be able to log in with whatever email and password they have used in previous years, and they'll be able to gain access to the account. They won't have to go through that registration again. Really quick, I'm going to show you guys how to add your users into the system when you're doing that. So like I said, we had our master reset, which means that only admins are left in the chapters right now. So you'll have to add your users. So you can go under the user tab here to add users, and you can either do that individually if you have a smaller chapter, or you can upload an email list. So all you'll need is the first and last name as well as their email address, and it will send them those login emails. And I know it didn't happen when I first came into the system, but a lot of times if it's your first time logging into OmegaRecruit, it's going to have a pop-up that says that you need to put in your recruitment date. So if you haven't done that, you can go over to the chapter tab. It should direct you there, and then go to edit chapter, where you can pop in some recruitment dates here. Let me put some more current recruitment dates for this. And then once you do that, you'll be able to navigate through the system. But that is going to be how you add your users. We want to help make recruitment as easy as possible for you guys. So basically the way we're going to look through the system today is breaking it down in 3 steps. So setting up your rounds we'll look at, and then uploading your P&M list, and then uploading your parties. After these steps, you're going to be good to go to start getting your votes in and kind of more so explore the system. But these are the 3 main things you'll need to do to get yourself started. Again, when you first sign into OmegaRecruit, you may have to update these dates, but typically when you first log in, you're going to be taken to this setup page. This page will walk you through each of the steps to set your chapter up for recruitment. Practice files are included on this page as well. If you just click on these hyperlinks, will get you those practice files. That way you can run through practice recruitment with fake data prior to the real deal. We definitely don't recommend practicing with actual recruitment data, so we provide these files for you guys so you can download them by clicking on each one. Each of the steps for setup are numbered and have a clickable link to take you to that OmegaRecruit page where you can complete them. You can also go to each of these pages from the menu on the left-hand side of the page over here. So we'll start with step 1, setting up our rounds. So again, if you click on that, it'll take you right to that. But on the left-hand menu, if you go to the chapter tab, and then under edit rounds, that is what we are currently under. We are going to use the add button to create all of our rounds for recruitment. You'll notice that when we add these, the preference round is always going to be that last round, and it's flagged accordingly. And we do recommend setting up all of your rounds at the same time. So for example, we're going to create 3 rounds. It's important to make sure you set all of them up initially to ensure that the system is going to calculate scores correctly, especially if you have any specific scoring for your organization. It can be affected by not setting up all your rounds at the same time. So definitely make sure if you have, 3 rounds of recruitment or 4 rounds, that you're setting that up. You don't have to set up a round for every single night, but you should do it for every single round of recruitment, in terms of we'll name round 1, we'll do this as open house. Round 2 we'll do as sisterhood, and then round 3 we will just call pref. And so if open house, if you're a larger school and you maybe open house spans through multiple days, you don't have to add multiple rounds for that. We have open voting and party voting, which you can use if you're having multiple days and multiple parties where you're seeing girls. So open voting, basically we'll just have all the P&Ms listed all together. If you use party voting, that will split them up into parties, and you can upload that party list, which with the practice rounds, there's 12 parties in the first round, and then there are 9 parties in the second round. It says that on the setup page if you're ever looking for that, but we're going to follow that today for our open house and sisterhood, and then we'll leave pref as open voting. We will go ahead and make sure you save those changes. So once those are saved, you can go back here and see that those are good to go. Again, that preference round is always going to flag as the last one, and we will go ahead and go back to the setup page, which this is what that was mentioning here, so it'll direct you back to that setup page every time. And as you can see, step 1 has now disappeared. So now we will go to step 2, which is uploading your PNMs. And this can also be found under the PNM dropdown, Add PNM. Uploading your PNMs may look a little different depending on your school. If your campus uses ICS, you can actually connect to ICS and pull those members into the system. Once you've connected to ICS, it will have like a button that says import from ICS, so it'll look a little different than this one. If your campus uses another software like Campus Director, you'll need to download a file of your PNMs from that software and then upload it here. I do want to note that even if your campus uses ICS, you still have the ability to run through practice recruitment using the test files. You just want to make sure you first disconnect from ICS, upload those practice files, practice, then you can connect back to ICS for the actual recruitment, and we'll show you later where you can connect and disconnect from ICS. To assist with the upload process, we do provide, though, detailed instructions and examples. So if you are downloading a file from another software, you want your file to look like what is pictured here. We have all the headers here. These are like the accepted header titles. You don't have to have all of these, but if you want to have this certain data, you do need to follow the exact header. So for example, sometimes we'll have people use like PNM pic or picture URL, and it won't upload correctly. So make sure you're using just URL or PNM picture. So just follow this to the T for the header names, and then on your file, just make sure it's as plain as possible, no type of like special formatting, anything like that. And then when you save it, you'll save it as an Excel 97 2003 workbook like this here, and you can then upload that file. I am going to go ahead and upload my PNM, and we'll upload those PNMs accordingly. If there are any errors with your list, it'll let you know. So if you're good to go, you'll get this green box here that says that they were successfully uploaded. You can see here, it does give us a warning that we have some missing unrequired columns, but because they're unrequired, it just is letting you know you don't have the columns there, but they're not necessary. Same thing will happen here. If you have any errors in your file, the error type will show up here and let you know where you need to fix that. But this is what that'll kind of look like. And again, you'll get that little green box if everything is good to go. So again, just make sure you're reviewing all the columns listed, formatting those correctly. Things like, for class names, you should use like freshman, sophomore, junior, things like that. Otherwise, it may not load into the system properly. And then just make sure any information you need, especially if you have specific calculations for your organization, that you are uploading that data, even though they may not be required fields. So going back to the PNM list here, if we close that, this little setup button here, this is always going to show you the setup page. We can see step 2 is now gone. And then if we close it, this is your main PNM list. We can see that all those PNMs are loaded into the system. Once you've uploaded your file, we can go back to the setup screen and go ahead, and we're going to skip to step 5 here, which is uploading your PNM parties. This is another page that might look slightly different. You all have connected to ICS. You'll have a button to import from ICS. So if your campus uses something else, you'll need to download a file of the party assignments from that software and then upload it here accordingly. Once again, we do provide those detailed instructions and examples. This one is a lot more simple than the last file. So all you need is the MIN, which typically any system you're using should have some sort of MIN. That is your member identification number. That just makes sure that that is giving each P&M a unique user number. You may have multiple Ashley Smiths, whereas this gives them a number to identify them accordingly. And then you will put the party accordingly. If an MIN does not have a party in the file with it, then it is not going to upload, or it will mark them as an inactive P&M. So make sure that if they are attending a party, that they have a party next to their MIN in the file. You're going to again save that as the 97-2003 workbook, and we'll go ahead and upload that. And if you're looking for this page on the side here, that is under the upload parties. Going back to the setup page, one thing to note on this is after you do steps 1 and 2, 3, uploading your users, which because this is a test account, we haven't uploaded those currently, so that is not disappeared yet. But after you upload your users, steps 4 and beyond will continue to stay on the page because these are steps that you typically repeat. So you'll have multiple rounds that have parties typically, so you'll have to do that each time you go into a new round if they have parties, and advancing your rounds, and then like going through your user votes. So those will always stay within the setup page. Now that we've reviewed setting up your chapter for recruitment, we are going to just go through the menu items found on the left-hand side of the page and discuss those where you can find everything. So like I said before, everything from the setup page can be found within the menu as well, but there are a few other pages within that. So the first thing we'll look at is our P&M list here. As a reminder, this page we can get to from the setup page by just closing that up here, the little button, so that's always available there. This is going to be kind of like your primary hub of information for admins. This is where you can review all of your P&Ms, their information as your members start voting, their scores as well. If we click on the hamburger menu in the right-hand corner, that's what we call this over here because it kind of looks like a little hamburger, we can see that we have a few different options here. So the refresh and recalculate, these are great to use just to have the most up-to-date information as members are submitting votes. So you can continue to refresh and recalculate during voting rounds as votes are coming in. We also have the export P&M list here. It will export or report all the P&M information if you choose to do that. And then if you choose select columns option, you can see all of the columns that you can show on the P&M list. So you can update this accordingly. So if you want to make sure if you have parties, you want to see the parties, make sure you always have your overall vote and then all the rounds selected so you can see your votes for each round if that's something you want to see. If you want to see anything else, you can update those. I'm going to update a few things here so we can see them. That should do. You can deselect and select as many columns as you need, just depending on what you're looking for. I did update a few here. Like you can see, when you mark it done, your columns are going to be adjusted to show any new columns that you checked. So for many of the columns like interest and admin notes, you can actually double click into these. If you didn't upload something within the file for these, you can always just add those within the notes here, double click on that, and you can change that accordingly. Same with major, and then in the admin notes, you can write anything on here, graduated early, or on volleyball team, things like that. Any notes you want to put in there, you can do that. Another column that you may need to double click on is also the picture column over here. You can double click on that and you'll see the URL. Most campuses are going to provide the URL for all P&M's pictures. So if one's not available, you can get one online as long as you right click on the image and then copy the image address and paste that URL here. It has to be the image address though, and not just the URL for the page where the picture is located. So that's how you can update that if somebody doesn't have a photo. If you plan to use the starred feature for the matching tool, you'll need to star P&Ms and users. So to star P&M, you can double click on the star in that column. let's say there are maybe some girls you met at some pre-recruitment events that you really enjoyed and you want to put them with some of your stronger recruiters, then you can star them and then star your users, your stronger recruiters, and then in the matching feature we'll look at later, you will be able to use the starred feature to match up those girls accordingly. And then you can also rearrange your columns if you want. So you can just highlight any column that you want to move and shift that over accordingly. If you refresh the page at any point, it will go back to its original arrangement, but you can always move it back accordingly. And then at the top of the page, you'll see that you can search and sort the P&M list. So to search or sort, you literally just type into that any word that you want specifically. Like let's say we want to just look at freshmen, we can type that in and it'll pull just the freshmen. Be careful with this though, if they have any like admin notes or interest that have the word freshman in it and they're not freshmen, so maybe they're sophomore, but maybe in their notes it says like played volleyball freshman year, then it will pull them into that. So just be careful when you're using that. You can always use the little icon here to do some more advanced filters. Kind of goes through that here for your sorting and searching, but you can search there, and then with the sorting you can click on the column and type over here, or you can just double click on the column to sort accordingly. So this is sorting it by parties, and then you can see here like it says party ascending. Once you sort the list how you want, then you can also pull information. So if you sort the list accordingly, it's like if we're pulling freshmen, what I'm going to show you next will only show freshmen in that. So if you want to show all your P&Ms, make sure you clear out any of these sorts or these searches to get all of those. But going back to the little hamburger icon here, we do have a slideshow over here. This again will only show the freshmen because that's what we have in the search bar, and you can just use the arrow keys to toggle over to look through those P&Ms accordingly. There is also another little hamburger up here. You can use that to take things off or add columns if you want them on there accordingly. And then if you hit the P key, that will take you to a printable version of this where you can just hit print. You may have to format this accordingly if you're wanting to print out that slideshow. So you may have to fix the format of that, but you will be able to print that. And then if you hit escape, it'll take you back to your P&M list there. So now that we've looked at the P&M list, let's take a look at everything else that's in that P&M drop-down menu. From the Add P&M page here, this is where you can manually add P&Ms. So if you have anybody who comes in later, maybe just like 1 or 2 P&Ms, you don't want to re-upload the whole file, you can add them here. Only the starred columns are the required. So anything that has that star is the required fields. But if you want to put in all their information, you can do that as well to make sure you have that data, and they'll pull into the list accordingly. And then the page we looked at earlier, the upload P&Ms, is where you can upload that via a file. Under your upload parties, we looked at this earlier. I'm going to go ahead and upload our parties for Sisterhood as well. And we'll have that when we go to vote. Under the comments here, this is just a report you can pull specifically for the comment. So if anybody adds a comment, we'll look at that when we look at the ballot where they go to vote. You can add a comment there. Oh, and another thing to mention about the uploading parties, you can always upload your P&Ms from an Excel spreadsheet no matter where you are in the recruitment process. So if you're uploading additional P&Ms into the system, they'll add that accordingly. They just need to match up with the MIN that's already in the P&M list. So like when you upload them as a P&M, make sure their MIN is on that party list accordingly, and you can just do those P&Ms. It'll ensure that only those new P&Ms are added when you're uploading them. And then same with the parties page. You'll just upload that, re-upload the parties file in each round. Let's say, you get last minute changes for party 1 for open house, you can re-upload the parties to correct that so you see the right P&Ms when you go to vote accordingly. And then going back to the comments here, you can download this file. It will, I don't think there's any comments in the system, but you can at least see the fields that are on here. So it'll have your P&M, the party they're in, their status, so whether they are still active or not in the system, comment type, the comment itself, who made the comment, and in what round, and the time that the comment was made. And then you also have the recs here. So if your chapter uses recommendations, that's a feature that Omega One has for any like alumni members who want to submit references for P&Ms, then they have that available. You can click on that link and share it with your people to who are making those recommendations, and then you can pull the report to see any recommendations that have come through. Now let's take a look at the rest of the reports under the reports section of the P&M dropdown. There are several different reports here that show various different things, but we have first the P&M report. So you can, this is going to just basically show you a summary of all the P&Ms and their scores. This can be a really good report to start your list at the end of each round. You can choose to do only active P&Ms, which is helpful. Like if you already know past P&Ms are inactive, you don't have to pull that data as well. And then you can also choose to include comments if you want. For the votes report, same thing. You can choose only active P&Ms, and then including the vote values. You can also specify if you only want to do it for certain rounds accordingly, and then you can choose how you want to sort it. If you pull it by user, it's going to show your members and like how they voted, so each of their votes. So it'll show Sarah Beth, and then what P&Ms I voted on, and that sort of thing. Whereas if you vote it by or sort it by the P&M, it'll show the P&Ms in order and then who all voted on each P&M. This is another version of the comments report. This just kind of helps you whittle it down some. So if you want to do it by round accordingly, and then you have the sort options here as well. This is another version of the slideshow. So the one that we looked at earlier was an in-browser slideshow. This one, if you prefer like a PowerPoint slideshow, you can download this accordingly. It doesn't have as much information as the in-browser slideshow, but you do have that available, and you can include only active P&Ms and the picture as well, and then download that. Your voter distribution here, this is going to show overall distribution report to show like voting trends for the chapter as a whole. We also offer this information for each of the P&Ms and on each of your users in case you want to see that information broken down. We saw the P&M report earlier, and we'll see the like user report later, but the distribution report just helps you better analyze and understand the data trends behind the voting being or the votes being submitted. So for example, if you have a lot of really high votes coming in and it's making it harder to whittle down your list, you can instruct your members accordingly on, you know, how you guys should be voting to make sure you're getting the most accurate votes and not everybody's just getting a high score because of, you know, whatever. So making sure that girls are really fitting the criteria that each chapter is looking for. Or in the opposite, if everybody's getting really, really low votes and you know, you need to rethink that, you can just inform your chapter. So this is great to look at for that. We also have the vote audit report here. This is going to show any changes to votes that have been made. We'll look at how you can change votes later, but if a member does incorrectly record a vote for whatever reason, or votes on the wrong P&M because, you know, maybe it was Ashley I and she meant to vote on Ashley B, you can go in and update and delete those votes as an admin. But this is going to show basically a vote log of all of those changes. So this is just kind of for accountability, making sure you can see previous data as well. So what something was changed from and to. It'll show who made the update. And like I said, whatever the original score was, what it was changed to, even what time that was made. And if your organization has any like categories specific for your voting, it will show which one of those particular votes were changed as well. And then looking at the user drop down here, we have our user list. This you can look at, this is like I know we looked at earlier how to add your users. Under the user list is where you can actually see them. This is where you can star your users accordingly. And if anybody hasn't logged in, you can resend their registration email for them. This is where you can also delete users or restrict them. These are all admins because of the master reset, but anytime you add new members, it'll show accordingly that, who's admin and who's not. And then you can also use groups here. So if you use like bump groups or anything like that, you can assign the groups here accordingly to organize your members, and that will come into play on the matching tool. And you can also search this list as well. And when you actually click on a user, this is where you can see some of the breakdown. So you can pull individual votes for each user, any comments that they made, their actual profile, so they can put interest in on their profile to match with PNMs. If you guys use that, here is where you can add a vote. I'll show you on a different account. Since this is super user, I can't add a vote, but I'll show you on an admin account what that'll look like. And this is where you can see the voter distribution broken down. And then there's some more user reports here. This is just like the general user report, and you can download that. Next, we'll look at the hub. So this shows graphs of key data points. With any of these graphs, you can just click on this little arrow and it'll flip around to show the actual data, and you can download that and then you can just flip it back. This is just like another way to review data on a deeper level and make the most of the information that's available to you. Below the hub, we have our matching feature that I know I've mentioned a few times. So this tool isn't a primary function of OmegaRecruit, but it can help you sort through a lot of the data that's in OmegaRecruit to determine which members should speak to which of the PNMs that I'll be visiting during each round. There's 4 criteria that you can use to generate potential matches. Recommendations, which are submitted by members on the ballot or through their profile. Then the starred PNMs and members, which we looked at how to star both of those. And you have interest and hometowns as well. If you use this feature, just make sure your members are going in when they log in and updating their match profile so that data is available to match them with PNMs, and you'll need to also have that data for your PNMs if that's provided. For all of these items, you can select if they should be used, so if you want to use it or not. So if you don't want to see any recommendations, or if you only want to see recommendations, you can do that accordingly, and then you can slide on how much of an importance they are to look at. And then for these two up here, if you're just wanting to whittle it down even further, you can look at all of this information, but they have to also have a recommendation. So if somebody has a match just for the hometowns, but they don't have a recommendation, then they won't show in this particular matching report because the recommendation is required. So keep that in mind when you're looking at that. And then here is where you can put your max number of matches per member. So you can adjust that accordingly. Typically, we say like between 2 and 5 matches, but it can be any number between 1 and 500. We just recommend starting somewhere between 2 and 5. The higher the max, the more potential matches that you'll have to sort through. But maybe if you're a larger chapter, you might need a larger selection of matches to accordingly match your people. Finally, you'll also select the round and the party you want to look at. So you can select that specifically for each round, and then if you want to do all parties, or if you want to select just a specific party, and then you can generate your matches. Once you generate the matches, you can export these via Excel or PDF, but before you export them, you can also edit. So if you want to delete any specifically, like you already know somebody has talked to somebody and you want to delete that match, you can do that. Or if you want to add a match that wasn't made here, you can select the member and then the PNM you want to match them with, put the reason for the match, and save that accordingly. And again, just make any adjustments like that before you export those. Below the matching is where we have our voting here. This is where your members and you as an admin will go to vote. Again, I'll show you that on an admin account when we actually look at voting. Below that, we have the chapter tab. This is where we were earlier for editing our rounds, and then as well as editing the chapter to put in those dates. The first tab on that, though, is your advancing your rounds and parties. This is what you'll use to go ahead and open up voting accordingly. So once you leave before recruitment, you cannot set it back to before recruitment. But once you open voting, you can change that status accordingly and advance through the rounds. So now voting is open for open house party 1, and then you can move through the parties each time. And then if you have, like I said, multiple days that a round may span across and you want to close the voting each night, you can close the voting, save that, and then reopen it the next day. We'll go ahead and leave that open so when we go to look at voting, we can submit some votes. We also have edit custom columns here. Earlier when we looked at the upload P&M list, there are some custom columns you can use. We have 6 custom columns. You'll name them custom column 1 through custom column 6 on the Excel file when you actually upload the information, but then you can come here to adjust the name of that custom column to whatever data that actually is, and then that'll reflect accordingly in the P&M list. I know I also mentioned earlier being able to connect to ICS and disconnect. So if you are an ICS campus, you can connect accordingly. You'll need some information, so it'll tell you when you click on this, the steps to go through to connect that. And then this is where you'd also disconnect if you're going to do practice. And then lastly here we have the master reset. On the master reset page, you'll just want to make sure to be really careful on this page. This is essentially where you can go to reset your chapter after each recruitment, as well as if you're doing testing like mock recruitments, you can reset this after each mock recruitment to run it again. But also at the end of fall, if you want to clear that data because you're going to have spring coming up, you can do master reset then. All of your data will be removed from the system when you do this, except for your members. So unlike the master reset that OmegaFi does each spring, your members, your users will stay in the system, but all of your P&Ms are going to be removed, all votes and comments deleted, and then the system is set in back to before recruitment. So just keep that in mind. We cannot get this data back once you do the master reset. And if you click on it, it will also ask you again, are you sure you want to do the master reset? And for any advisors out there, definitely if you're doing a master reset, double check that it's for the correct chapter. It'll normally say master reset, and then it'll tell you what chapter that's for, just so you make sure that you are on the correct chapter and to do that as well. And then underneath our chapter tab, we have the configuration tab. So this page just houses all the details regarding your specific organization's voting information. So if you have any specifics, they'll be shown here. If not, you'll see this general page, and this is how our voting is recorded for just any organization who doesn't have any specifics. This is how it's going to calculate your votes here. And then we also have our training menu here that we can look at. This has various screenshots as well as a video from last summer, I believe, webinar. So if anybody needs to check that out, and then you can go through, this goes step by step and screenshots of how to set up your recruitment as well as some other information. So these are really good to go through if you're wanting to, maybe you don't have time to watch a video, but you want to scroll through and look at these accordingly. We do have those steps there. And then if you click on the little support icon here, you can reach out to our support team accordingly, or you can email us, which I'll put the email on the screen a little later. And then you can also click the Get Help tab here. This takes you to our resource center here. Basically, any questions you may have, you can pop that into the search bar and it'll pull up different articles that can help you with that. So, or you can go through kind of the general setup. So if you want to look at the new officer information, if you're new, if you want to look at specifically P&M information, you can click through those menus, or you can also, again, use the search to find something specific. So that is another great resource that you can use in the system. So let me pull up, I'm gonna log into a admin account so I can show you guys voting. Okay, looking at the test chapter, this is it looks pretty much the same as what we were just looking at, but this is an admin version. You have where you can hit vote here, and it'll actually pull up the ballot because we have our voting open. And then because we use party voting, it's only going to show me the list of people who are in party 1. If you use open voting, it will show you the list of all the P&Ms. So that's kind of the difference between those two. But any votes I want to submit, I can click on the P&M, select the vote. If I want to make sure it's the correct P&M, it has their picture here. You can also click the light bulb and it will give you a little bit more information if you're just wanting to make sure that that's the same person. And then you can click this little file icon. It'll go back to the ballot. Any comments you want to add. And then if you want to recommend a member match, this is, again, where I said with the matching tool, these are where your recommendations are. So if I want to recommend, I think she would get along really well with Hannah, or I think she would get along really well with Carrie. If Carrie's a member in the system, then I can submit that, recommend that member match. We'll go ahead and put a few votes in here just to see those. And then when we go back to that P&M list, you'll be able to see the votes accordingly. You can also redo the search by overall vote, see that, or well, if you're wanting to just do the round votes, you can search it by that or the overall accordingly. And again, this is where you can export your P&M list. This might be a good place to start your list each night. When you pull that P&M list, it's going to look something like this. Here's an example of a P&M list report here. It'll show all the information. If there are no votes submitted, it'll show that -1. So that's what you're looking at there. It's just no votes were submitted on that particular person. But if you do have votes, it'll show that vote amount, and then it just any of the information that you have in your list, it'll pull all of that. So that is what that'll look like when you pull that. And that's why it's also important to have as much information as you can. If you're wanting that to look at or do anything specific with when you're looking through the data, you'll need that information to be able to sort accordingly. And one other thing to know, I know we looked at the ballot here. Depending on your organization, the appearance of the ballot and voting scales may vary. So if your ballot does look a little different from this, don't be too alarmed. It's probably just specific to your organization, especially if they're set up specific by your nationals. So we can also go back to this right here, and I'll just show if there's any information you think you're not seeing it, this is a good time where you could do the refresh and recalculate as members are voting, and that's going to just make sure you're always having real-time data there. And then if you want to view individual votes for a P&M, you can go here to the P&M list and then select a specific P&M by name, and you can see their vote details. So you can see here, this is a place where you can edit that vote. So if the vote was maybe incorrectly put in, you can delete it if it was meant for another member, or change the vote accordingly, and it'll show up on the audit log. And you can also look by round as well. And then same with the comments and the status and party. This is where you can also change the status of the P&M and look at any details as well as her recruitment stats. So you can look at that under the specific P&M. Under the user, you can also edit votes here as well. And that pretty much is everything within the system. Just another note, preparation is going to help you have the most success within your recruitment. So the best practices that we talked about earlier, just a reminder, make sure you're having your members log in, practice with mock recruitment sessions so you and your members are familiar with the system, and then train using those resources. We looked at several different resources today. We have the training tab, as well as we have the webinars and the help section. So anything you may need can be on there. And then even if you don't find it within the system, you can always email us at recruitment_support@omegafy.com. We also have our login email here if your members need any help logging in, login support@omegafy.com. And then again, that get help in the OmegaRecruit app will take you to that help center accordingly. And then now I'm gonna turn it over to Carrie to see what questions have come in.
Hey, Sarah Beth. I think a couple of questions that we hadn't gotten to yet, so I will read them aloud. The first one, if parties change, can I re-upload that list and make the correct changes?
Yes, so I know in recruitment a lot of times there's last minute changes to party lists, so if at any point that party list changes, you can definitely re-upload the party list and change the MIN's party that they're in, and it will just update that. It'll just write over the old information.
Perfect, thank you. One other question, and then I think we've gotten all the other ones answered. How can you change a user's vote?
So I know we just kind of looked at that, but if you go to where we're at right here, if you go to the user list and click on the specific user, you can see their votes and edit or delete those accordingly. And then also from the PNM list, if you click on a PNM, you can change their votes here.
Thank you, Sarah Beth. I believe that is all that we had.
Well, I will leave this contact information just up on the screen for a little bit. If anybody needs that, take a screenshot so that you have that email during the recruitment season. During when recruitment goes to start, we are 24/7 support during the recruitment season. So reach out at any time and our team will make sure to get back to you. They have a pretty quick response time. I know with recruitment, you need those quick responses as it is a fast-paced environment. So we do have that 24/7 response on there. So here is that information in case you need it. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their evening.